Welcome to Lento English. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
1. Introduction. The world is watching the Middle East very carefully. A conflict between two countries, Israel and Iran, is getting bigger. This situation is very tense and dangerous. Israel and Iran have been fighting each other for some time, but now the fighting is growing. Rockets are being fired and military targets are being hit. This growing conflict is a big worry for many countries. It feels like a storm is coming. At this important time, Donald Trump is the leader of the United States. He is the president for the second time. With President Trump leading the U.S., a very important question is in the air. What will the United States do in this growing conflict? Will America become part of the fighting? President Trump has a plan ready. His plan is to use the U.S. military to strike Iran directly. This plan is prepared and waiting, but President Trump has not yet said yes. He has not given the final order to start the attack. This means the situation is still very uncertain. Will the U.S. join the fighting, or will it not? This story is about one specific week. It is a week where the tension is extremely high. Diplomats are talking, armies are moving, and people around the world are waiting. One decision from President Trump during this week could change everything in the Middle East. It could lead to a much bigger war. This war could involve many countries and cause great problems for everyone. Or if he decides not to attack, the path forward will be different. The future is not clear. People around the world are holding their breath, waiting to see what President Trump will do. This is the story of that tense week where one decision holds the power to change the world. 2. Trump makes a plan. Inside the White House, President Trump had important meetings with his senior helpers. They were discussing the serious situation with Iran. President Trump reviewed the different plans that the military had made for a possible attack on Iran. After looking at these plans, he told his helpers that he approved them. This meant he thought the plans were good and could be used if he decided to take action. However, even though he approved the plans, President Trump did not give the final command to start the attack right away. He decided to wait. He said he was waiting to see what Iran would do next. He wanted to know if the government in Tehran would decide to stop its nuclear program. This program is a big concern for the United States and its friends. President Trump was very firm about what he expected from Iran. He stated clearly that Iran must surrender completely. This strong demand meant that Iran should give up its nuclear work entirely and agree to stop without asking for anything in return. He wanted Iran to stop everything related to making nuclear materials. Talking about the time ahead, President Trump told the people around him that the next week would be very, very important. He stressed that big things could happen soon. He even said it might be less than a week until a final decision was made. This period was seen as a critical time for the future. The military plans for a possible strike were now approved by the president. They were ready to be used. But the ultimate decision, the final command to begin the action, was still with President Trump. He had the power to say yes or no to starting the attack. He was carefully watching the situation with Iran. He was hoping Iran would change its actions and stop its nuclear program. His approval of the plans meant the U.S. military was prepared if he chose to act, but his decision to wait meant there was still time for diplomacy or for Iran to change its position. The people working closely with President Trump understood the seriousness of this moment. President Trump's words showed that the upcoming days would be very important and possibly tense. The authority to launch a military action against Iran was solely in his hands. Everyone was waiting anxiously to see what he would finally decide to do. He had the approved plans ready to go. He had given his agreement for the preparations to be made. But the very last word, the command to begin the attack, had not been spoken yet. He was waiting to see if Iran would stop its nuclear program. He wanted Iran to surrender completely and unconditionally. President Trump repeated that the next week would be very big. It was a period of waiting, watching, and high tension. The decision about whether to use the approved attack plans was entirely his. The whole world was watching and waiting for his final word on this critical matter. His choice would have major consequences for the region and beyond. 3. Ships move on the sea. The United States military started to prepare. Soldiers and sailors got ready for possible actions. Big ships began their journeys on the large sea. These powerful ships were traveling to the area near the Middle East. Their movement was part of the U.S. plan. One important ship arrived. It was a third U.S. Navy ship. This ship is a type called a destroyer. It is a fast warship with many weapons. It entered the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea. This sea is very important because it is close to the Middle East region. At the same time, another large group of warships was moving. This group is called a carrier strike group. It includes a very big ship, a carrier, which is like a moving base for many airplanes. There are also other ships that travel with the carrier to protect it. This second large group was heading towards the Arabian Sea. The Arabian Sea is another important body of water near the Middle East. Leaders at the Pentagon, which is the main building for the U.S. military, talked about why these ships were moving. They said the reason was defense. This means the ships were sent to protect U.S. interests and to help friends in the region. They said the ships were not there to start a fight. However, the presence of these ships did more than just provide defense. Having many warships close to the region makes the U.S. military very ready. It means they can act very quickly if President Trump makes a decision to use military force. If the president decides to join in attacks, these ships are already in place. They can launch planes or use other weapons from the sea. So the ships had a double purpose. One purpose was to be ready to defend if needed. The other purpose was to be in a good position to attack if that decision was made. This show of strong military power also sent a clear message. It was a way to put pressure on Iran. The U.S. wants Iran to perhaps change its actions or policies. Moving big, powerful ships close by is a way to show strength. It says, "We are strong and we are here." This kind of action can make another country feel pressured to do something. President Trump had said he was waiting to make a final decision about what to do. The movement of these ships was happening while he waited. The military was following orders to get forces ready. They were putting the ships, planes, and people in the right places. This way, everything would be prepared if President Trump decided it was time to act. The ships moved day and night across the wide seas. They carried hundreds or even thousands of sailors and marines. They carried many types of equipment and weapons. Their mission was to be ready for anything, to be ready in this time of high tension in the Middle East. Other countries around the world saw these U.S. ships moving. They understood that this was a sign of how serious the situation was. The movement of each ship, especially the large carrier group, was watched closely. It showed that the United States was building up its power in the area. The ships were a clear signal, a signal that the U.S. was preparing for possibilities, a signal that military action was not impossible. The sea was filled with these large signs of power. They were waiting for the next command, waiting for the final word from the president. Their presence showed the world that the situation was close to a critical point. 4. A warning from Iran. The United States put pressure on Iran. U.S. ships moved closer. U.S. leaders talked about plans. Iran's leaders heard this. They had to answer. The top leader in Iran is called the Supreme Leader. He spoke for the country. He said Iran would not give up. Iran would not surrender to the U.S. demands. He also gave a warning. He said if the United States attacked Iran, the results would be very bad. He used strong words. He said the problems could not be fixed later. This was a clear message to the U.S. It meant an attack would have serious and lasting effects. Another important person in Iran also spoke. This was the deputy foreign minister. He talked about how Iran would fight back if needed. He said if the U.S. helped Israel attack Iran, then Iran would have to use its power. Iran has different tools to defend itself. These could be weapons or other ways to fight. The deputy minister said Iran would use these tools. He said Iran would defend its country. It would fight to protect itself from people who attack it. So Iran was not silent. Its leaders were speaking clearly and strongly. They were telling the U.S. that pressure would not make them surrender. They were saying they were ready to fight. The U.S. military was showing its strength in the sea. It was sending a message of power. It was ready to act if President Trump gave the order. But Iran was also showing its strength. Its leaders were firm in their words. The Supreme Leader's message was very serious. He said Iran would stand strong against any attack. The deputy foreign minister added more detail about Iran's plan. He said Iran had the means to fight back. These means would be used if the U.S. joined an attack. Iran saw the U.S. actions as a threat to its safety. They felt they must be ready. They said they had no other choice if the U.S. decided to fight them. They would use everything they had to defend their land and people. This meant Iran was not afraid of a fight. They wanted President Trump and the U.S. to understand this very well. They were saying, "Do not attack us. If you do, we will fight back with all our power." This made the situation more dangerous. The U.S. military was ready. Iran said it was ready too. The words from Iran were a big warning to the U.S. and the world. They showed that Iran would not give up easily. They showed that a war could cause great damage. The leaders in Iran spoke with one voice on this point. They wanted the U.S. to know their position. The world heard this warning from Iran. It added to the tension in the region. The U.S. was waiting. Iran was waiting. But Iran was also sending its own messages. These messages were strong. They were warnings about the cost of an attack. Iran's leaders were firm. They would not change their minds about defending their country. They were preparing for the possibility of war. They were telling their people and the world this: the U.S. showed its military power. Iran showed its will to fight. This was Iran's answer to the pressure. They would not surrender. They warned of bad results. They said they would use their power to fight back. 5 different ideas in America. In America, not everyone thought the same way about the situation with Iran. There were different ideas and opinions. One important difference was about who should decide if the U.S. takes military action. Some people in the government, especially lawmakers in Congress, believed that the president should not make this big decision alone. They felt that Congress, which represents the American people, should also agree. Because of this feeling, some lawmakers wanted to create a new rule. They wanted to pass a law that would stop the president from attacking Iran unless Congress gave its approval first. This idea was being discussed and was in its early stages, but it showed that there was a strong wish for different parts of the government to work together on such a serious issue. It also showed that people in America had different views on the president's power in this situation. This disagreement in the U.S. government made the situation more complex. Another big area of disagreement was about Iran itself. Specifically, people had different ideas about how close Iran was to having a nuclear weapon. This was a very important point because the possibility of Iran getting a nuclear weapon was a main reason for the tension. Some people in the U.S. government studied information about Iran's nuclear work very carefully. They looked at many details to understand the situation. Based on their study, they had an idea about Iran's progress. There was a report from these experts. This report said that, at that time, Iran was not close to building a nuclear weapon. This was the opinion of some people who worked with important information inside the government. Their job was to understand threats based on facts. However, President Trump had a different idea about this. He did not agree with the report from the experts. He believed that Iran was, in fact, close to having a nuclear weapon. His belief was based on his own understanding or feeling about the situation. He said that he did not care what the report or the experts said. He had his own view, and he trusted his own judgment more than the information from others. So there were 2 different ideas about a very important fact: how close Iran was to a nuclear bomb. One idea came from experts looking at information. The other idea came from the president. This disagreement showed that even within the U.S. government, people did not share the same facts or beliefs about the threat from Iran. This made the situation inside America complicated. Different parts of the government had different ideas about the problem and about the right way to act. These different ideas added to the tension and uncertainty surrounding the possible conflict with Iran. It showed that America was not fully united in its view or plan. These internal differences were also part of the big picture during this tense week. The question of military action was not simple, and neither were the opinions about it within the country. 6. A friend is worried. The United Kingdom is a country in Europe. It is a very close friend and partner of the United States. Right now, the people in the UK government are feeling worried. They are anxious about the situation in the Middle East. They see the problems between the United States and Iran getting bigger. The leaders of the UK government want to stop the situation from getting worse. They really want to avoid a big war. They are talking to the United States government a lot. British officials are having meetings with American officials in Washington. The UK wants to keep its good relationship with President Trump and the US government. This friendship is very important to the UK for many reasons. They feel they have built a strong connection with the US. But the UK leaders are also thinking about what might happen if the US decides to attack Iran. They worry about how the UK could become involved in the fighting. The United States military uses some places that belong to the UK. For example, there is a military base on an island far away in the ocean. This island is part of the UK. The US military uses this base. The UK government worries that if the US attacks Iran, American planes could use this base. If the base is used for an attack, it means the UK is helping the US. This could make the UK a target too. This is a big worry for them. So the UK government is being very careful. They are watching everything closely. They are telling the United States that they want peace. They are saying that it is better to talk than to fight. They feel anxious about the possible results if the US attacks. They are also anxious about keeping their strong friendship with the US government. They hope President Trump will listen to their worries. The UK government is trying to influence the decision. They hope the US will not attack Iran. They are trying to find ways to help find a peaceful solution to the problem. British officials are meeting with American officials to talk about the crisis. They are explaining their concerns very clearly. The UK feels it is in a difficult place. It is a loyal friend to the US, but it really wants to avoid a war in the Middle East. The UK government is thinking about the rules and what they can or cannot do. They are thinking about what their role might be if the situation becomes more dangerous. People who work for the UK government, especially the diplomats who work with other countries, are particularly anxious. They have worked hard to have a good relationship with the US government under President Trump. They feel they have done well in building this connection over the past months. They worry that a war could damage this important relationship. They want the strong friendship between the UK and the US to continue, no matter what happens. This friendship is important for trade, safety, and other shared goals. They know that President Trump has a big decision to make very soon. They hope that their message about avoiding war is heard clearly in the White House. The UK is a close partner, and its opinion is important to the US. But the final decision about military action is only for the US president to make. The UK government is waiting and watching. They feel anxious about what the future holds. They really hope for a peaceful end to this problem. They continue to talk to their friends in the US government. They explain their worries about possible military actions. They emphasize that talking and diplomacy are the best way forward. The UK wants to help find a diplomatic solution. They are part of international efforts to reduce the tension between the US and Iran. They are also concerned about the safety of their own country and their people. A war in the Middle East can have effects on many countries around the world. The UK feels the seriousness of this possible conflict. They are a friend and partner, but they have their own important worries. They are actively working to prevent the crisis from growing into a war. Their leaders are focused on this very important issue. They are speaking to many people in different countries, but their talks with the United States are especially important because the US is the main country involved. The UK government is trying its best to help influence the situation towards peace. They are worried about what will happen if there is a military attack. They are worried about their own possible part in it. They are worried about the future of their friendship with the United States. All these worries make the people in the UK government feel very anxious. They hope for a peaceful outcome. They continue their important discussions with the US. They are a friend who is worried about the future. 7. A meeting for peace. While soldiers and ships prepared, some people worked for peace. Not everyone wanted the situation to become a big war. Leaders in Europe thought talking was important. They believed that speaking together could help stop the danger. Foreign ministers from 3 countries in Europe decided to meet. These countries were the United Kingdom, Germany, and France. A foreign minister is a high government official who works with other countries. These 3 ministers plan to have a meeting with Iran. They plan to meet Iran's foreign minister. His name was Abbaski. The meeting was planned to happen in a city called Geneva. Geneva is in Switzerland. It is a place where many international meetings happen. The goal of this meeting was diplomacy. Diplomacy means countries talk to each other to solve problems peacefully. The foreign ministers wanted to talk about the difficult situation. They wanted to find a way to stop the conflict from growing bigger and more dangerous. This meeting was a chance for peace. It was an effort to find a peaceful solution. It showed that some leaders still hoped to avoid fighting. They wanted to make the situation less tense. They hoped their talks could help de-escalate things. News came that the meeting was confirmed. Iran's foreign minister said he would meet his European friends in Geneva. This was important. It meant that even with all the tension and military movements, countries were still willing to sit down and talk. The European ministers and Iran's minister would sit at a table. They would talk about the problems. They would listen to each other. They would try to find common ground. Finding common ground means finding ideas that both sides can agree on. Many people around the world watched this meeting. They hoped it would be successful. They hoped that talking would be stronger than fighting. They hoped that this meeting in Geneva could bring a step towards peace. The meeting was a sign of hope. It showed that not all doors were closed. It showed that there was still a chance for discussion. This meeting was a very important event in the week. It was a moment when leaders tried to use words, not weapons, to change the future. They hoped their talks would make the dangerous situation better for everyone. 8. A big week ahead. The situation was still difficult. It started with problems, and now the future was not clear. There was still great uncertainty. Many people felt worried about what could happen next. It was a time of waiting. President Trump had spoken about the coming days. He said something important. He told people that the next week was going to be very big. This meant the next 7 days were very important for the world. A big decision might happen soon. The military forces were ready. They were in their positions. Big ships were in the sea near the area. More ships had arrived. They were powerful forces. They showed that America was strong. These forces were there to be ready for anything. They could defend the country and its friends, but they were also in a good place to attack if President Trump made that decision. The U.S. military was waiting for his word. Iran had also given its answer. The leaders of Iran had spoken strongly. They gave clear warnings. They said that Iran would not give up. They would not surrender. They warned that if the United States attacked their country, there would be very bad results. These results could cause many problems for everyone. Iran said that it was ready to fight back. It said it had ways to defend itself if someone attacked first. While the military was ready and the warnings were loud, some people were trying another way. They wanted to find a peaceful solution. Not everyone wanted a war. Diplomats, people who talk for their countries, were working hard. Countries in Europe wanted to talk with Iran. They planned a meeting. This meeting was a chance for talks about peace. It was an effort to stop the conflict from getting worse. It was like a final try for talking instead of fighting. So many things were happening at the same time. The military was in place and ready to act. The warnings from Iran were clear and strong. The diplomats were trying for peace through talks. All these things were waiting for one person. The final decision was with President Trump. The world was watching him now. People everywhere were waiting to see what he would decide to do in the coming days. The big week was starting. What would happen? Would there be peace or would there be fighting? No one knew for sure. It was a time of high tension and waiting for one man's choice.